all of my meters say we're live. We have a fantastic show. Melanie, thank you for joining us. And Johnny, nice to see you again. So, how are you guys doing? Johnny, Melanie, what's happening?
Doing
Well,
great.
here's Melanie Schmidt, everybody, from Hachette, and we're delighted to have her with us. A couple quick three quick housekeeping things before we roll into this. One, don't forget that Don's come out with his new ACX file checker. He put a ton of work into it. It's available for free on his site. Take a look, and it's a labor of love. I find in our industry, so many people do so many wonderful things for other people and they're not doing it for this, but Don deserves this. It's a great thing and something you should utilize in ACX. The other thing is when Don posts these get-togethers, please, it's wonderful that you like, but please make comments and share because that really helps the show get out there a little more. And the third thing is there are still like a couple spots left for the New England Narrator Retreat, October 13th, and that's coming right up. It's a month away, so if you want to come, this is your chance to jump in. Let me know if you have any questions, any problems, and that's that. So let's welcome Melanie. Yay! Pretend it's a huge.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, you see all this. Can you read all the things coming in?
Well, if I highlight one, just so you know.
Yeah. So what happens is these guys chat and anything. Here's Simon. So he highlights it and then we can respond. But you and I, we can't go into their chat. So if you find something that pops up, you notice it, you want Don to talk about it, we'll do it.
It's in teeny tiny rice writing.
Yeah, luckily I can see it on mine.
Don's power mad. Only he can see any of this. He controls it all.
And I've always been, so it's no different now. So I'm always curious. You're my daughter's age, so that just means I'm old. So how in the world did you get started with audiobooks? Why in the world are you doing this when you had 4,000 options in life and this is where you ended up?
So largely luck and location. I think most people get into this business kind of by similar means, luck and location. When I got out of school, I had received a master's in English. I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I knew I was interested in publishing. And I knew my neighbor, Lisa Kahn, worked for publishing. And so I just went and chatted with her. At the time, she was working for Hachette Audio, and she had her studio set up in the Hudson Valley, and she was looking for assistance at the studio. So I started doing work for her back in 2017 and kind of haven't looked back. So, I just got involved that way.
Is Lisa on her own now, or is she with Hachette?
She's on her own now. She's doing it.
Yeah. She's wonderful. She's really, I mean, she is a, I think of her with, May Woolrich. I can't say her name. May Woolrich is.
Maybe if you wrote it down, I might know it.
Yeah, you're an English major.
It's like Elmer Fudd. Anyway, they remind me of the same kind of person. They're really just wonderful. They just find a way to get deep into a project and bring out the best in the talent that they hire. I find it in my experience with them. And Lisa's I find her a very fascinating person.
She is, and she's always been very interested in bringing people in and, helping introduce them to this world that she's been in for such a long time. So I feel very, very fortunate. I'm so happy to have found this world. And
Did you grow up in the town you live in now? Is that your hometown?
I did, yeah. I live in my hometown. I actually live in my childhood home. I bought it from my parents.
Wow. So, and did you go to college there?
No, I boomeranged away and then boomeranged home. University of Virginia.
Oh, wow, you did go. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a fine university right there in your backyard.
Yeah, well, I didn't want to stick around for that.
Yeah. I'll live in my home house for my life. I'll stay but by God, I'm taking 4 years away.
Absolutely. Hey, I took 5 years away. I went and, did a master's program there too. So
did you, when you got out of college and finished the studies, did you just do kind of fill in jobs till you found your place?
Pretty much. I never learned how to drive when I was in high school. And my parents both had stick shifts. And then my mom screamed every time I tried to put it into into gear.
Sure.
So that didn't work out. So I came home from school with the intent of getting a license and
Learn how to.
then going elsewhere. And
Big aspirations.
then I didn't go anywhere, and I started doing stuff with Lisa, and
Can you
started doing other
can
stuff.
you drive now?
I sure can, yeah.
I'll tell you. I was talking about. I have not owned a car since since 1986 when I moved out of Chicago because I've never in New York City. Your choice is get an apartment to live in or get a car. You can't have both. So but then we've rented cars, of course. And I don't know when things change because no one gave me the inner office memo. But I rent a car and I get in and I'm there. I had to be there 15, 20 minutes. And the guy finally goes, "Sir, why aren't you? What's the matter?" And I said, I don't know how to make this thing go because there was no key or anything.
Hit the
He said
button.
you have to hit the brake first to make it. I said,
Mhm.
why would that's so counterintuitive? Wouldn't you hit the gas? Wouldn't that make more sense? I'm just saying. Anyway, so that's right. I don't know anything about cars, and I still don't.
So
But I
we'll
may buy a car maybe a
after the
stick
show.
and
We'll
see-
explain that to you, sir.
I don't understand. It doesn't make it. Why would you hit the brake to go? It's
Yeah,
not-
they just want to make sure that when the engine starts, it doesn't lurch forward or backwards is part of it. So the
Oh,
brake
come
is.
on, you got to have a little excitement in your day.
Yeah.
I smash into some garage doors.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah. Well, so I want to know why you chose English as a for a master's degree. Like I haven't I haven't mastered English, so actually going to school for it would probably benefit me, but it's not something that I ever did. Was that a conscious choice about that, or you got done with your and decided, all right, now I'm going to really dig in? How'd that come about?
So I actually did a 5-year program at University of Virginia. So they had like some BA, MA programs. So I made the call to do a master's degree when I was still the third year in college.
Wow.
Which was a choice. At the time, I thought maybe academia was where I wanted to be, and a master's seemed like a good start for that. I determined at a certain point I didn't want to go into academia, but I'm still really interested in books. I love reading. I've always loved reading. And I just became very interested in how books were made. That was kind of my biggest fascination point. And so that's sort of where I landed with it. But, one of those choices that you make when you're 20.
I'd like to discuss something based on what you said. Yeah, first off, I want to say, and this is you're doing a great job. I mean, I've only heard you so far in the show, and you've really got English down well. So that's worked. That's been excellent.
Well,
He
I
tells
also
me
got
that
a
too.
bachelor's in French, but I've lost a lot of that.
Soccer blue. Let me talk about. You brought up some about how books are made and everything.
Mhm.
I think a lot of people, including those listening and watching our show, they're all interested in audiobooks. Obviously, or they wouldn't be here. In acting, or they wouldn't be here. But not many know the real process of Don writes a book. Then where does he sell it? Does he sell it? And he sells it, Hachette buys it. Does it go into audio right away? All those kind of things. And what's the process like? Can you talk a little bit like kind of a basic kind of Don writes the book, then and you guys are interested. What happens? What's the method? What's the
So it's a little bit more of a lengthy process, typically, especially for a first-time author. So Don in this case, Don writes a book. Then Don has to find an agent who will help him sell the book, or he goes the indie route. Maybe he self-publishes. But let's go the traditional way for now. So Don gets an agent, but first he sends out about 10,000 query letters to various agencies to try to get someone to pick
I've done
him
that.
up. And then once he gets that agent, the agent starts to shop it around. So, you go to various publishers, see what sticks.
A quick question? Do agents call on purchasers at Hachette, Macmillan, and Simon & Schuster, or is there a meeting time they do it, or they just call up Melanie and say, "Hey, I've got a project"?
So I think that this is not my area of deep knowledge, so I don't want to be quoted on anything here.
No one quote her.
So from what I understand, that there's a whole sales process and a whole set of wheeling and dealing. Sometimes there will be books up that everybody is clamoring for and will be bidding for. So
That'd be my book. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. You know, that's Don's book. Don's book is going to be there. It's going to go for millions.
A million minus anyway.
So, you know, once a deal is made, once the acquisition has been made, then, you know, they start working on some of the further rights for that. So, you know, especially now when Hachette, for instance, acquires a book, they're going to try to get audio rights most of the time. There, you know, are still some exceptions, some areas where they're not interested in doing that, and they don't always get the audio rights. Usually they will, but there are books that Hachette publishes, for instance, that Hachette Audio does not publish the audio for because the audio rights were sold elsewhere. But that's part of that early process. That's not something that audio is involved in. So, you know, at that point, book deal. Book hasn't really been written yet, though, because Don wrote the book, but now the book is going to the editors and the book team, and they're going to say, well, we like this part of it, but actually we think we need some adjustments here. You know, your book is about pixies, and pixies aren't big right now. Like, could you make your book about pixies into a book about vampires?
Yeah.
Because that's really hot at this moment.
Yeah,
So,
reverse harem vampires who mow lawns.
Right.
so, you know, that's what starts happening, and it goes through all the writing, and you know, they decide kind of how they're going to pitch it, etc. And it takes a while to get to audio. We really start doing things with it 6 months out from publication date, and that's kind of where we step in. But that's the basics again. Not getting into the super nitty gritty details of it, but yeah.
So somebody I know is asking, does the author get anything out of the audio version? Is that part of the royalty stream, or is that separate, or?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a sale of the book. So there's usually, you know, there might be different numbers, different deals. But, you know, and it used to have variation when we had physical copies. We don't really do physical copies in the same way anymore. But yeah, they get a percentage of royalties from audio sales.
Cool.
I find it, and also I find what's changed since I've been in the business, which is long. It used to be that the casting director, here's you're in casting, so Don's book is there, and you have a myriad of ways to cast. I mean, besides various platforms and things, you may have 3 people in mind or 4, and these are the people you want, and you may. But now, more recently than ever, the authors or the author's agent at least has a lot more say in who gets the book.
Yeah,
who gets to do it. So while let's say you want Stacy Carolyn to do the book, and the author says, no, that guy sounds like the guy I really hated in high school who bullied me. So regardless how good Stacy may be, he was not going to get that. And I think there were times where I remember when I began my career, recorded books, Claudia Howard. You know the name Claudia Howard?
yes, yeah.
Okay, so Claudia, she was great. The author sometimes would also, let's say Don wanted to do his book too. So you would get Johnny and Stacy and Scott Brick and Sean Pratt and Joel Frumkin and Don, all of us to read the same section. And you'd let Don, the author, hear all the reads. And Don would realize, I shouldn't be doing this book. One of these other people should. That happened a lot. But now, does it seem to you that more and more authors have a much larger say in who gets cast in the audiobook?
I think, you know, say is maybe the wrong word. Interest is significant there. At least in the time that I have been involved in casting, you know, we basically do the thing where, again, I get a book assigned to me. I get an audio brief from the author, so they write out a little bit of detail about what they're interested in seeing, the, you know, kind of character details, things like that. And then I go and say, okay, yeah, I think this would be a great fit for Johnny Heller. I think this would be a great fit for, you know, Don Baarns, that kind of thing. And so I send out a sample request, as you were mentioning. And most of the time we have an obligation to send at least 3 samples to the authors, and they are supposed to choose from those. So technically speaking, if they, you know, don't like any of them, technically we gave them 3 samples. Like, we could choose from that, but you know, we care about our authors. We want to make our authors happy.
Yeah.
We want to work with them. So if they don't like them, if they don't feel like those samples are good, and we hope that that's not the case, you know, I make an effort to go and get additional samples if that's the situation. But and I would say authors are much more involved. They know audio now. Even
Yeah.
5 years ago, you would have talk to an author and they'd be like, "What is an audio?" They'd have no idea. They'd be like, "Oh, I didn't know they made an audiobook of my book."
Yeah, I know. But now it's,
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting how giant this business has become. I mean, it's gone from multi-million-dollar business to multi-billion-dollar business. Look at the APA numbers. They're always astronomically high one year to the next. It's like the fastest growing stock since crypto.
So what I want to know is, do you have a roster of people that you kind of, how does that process work? If like you don't know, pretend I was a narrator all the time, and you don't know about me, and we just met or whatever. I want to contact you. Is that something that how in the world do you know who was out there besides Johnny Heller?
So we do have a database, and you can access this database at HachetteAudio.com. There's a For Narrators tab, and you can fill it out if you're not already on there. It is a massive database, so I think calling it a roster is maybe the wrong term. Database is a better term for it, but I use that all the time when I'm casting. It's got a lot of details in it, and it's a good way for me to kind of look around. But I also do appreciate when people reach out. I might not respond because I get a lot of messages on a daily basis, but I know it's there. It's a good reminder, good to know people's names. So you can reach out to me at melanie.schmidt@hbgusa.com.
I'll put
And
that in the chat.
I have a little a little narrators folder in my email. So sometimes I'll go hunt through that, look for keywords, things like that. So if you put in there genres that you like and excel at, languages that you're good at, that kind of thing, it's really helpful for me. So I listen to audiobooks. I check out what's going on audiophile. I keep my ear to the ground. So the way I find people for casting is it's kind of multi source.
So I'm
Is there a
putting.
genre? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Don.
I'm sorry. May I put your email address in the chat? Is
Yeah.
that okay?
Absolutely.
Now, what I'm assuming is you'd like me to email you what, twice a day, 4 times a day? Is that
I think quarterly is quite nice.
okay? And if I don't receive an answer from you within a day and a half, is that the follow-up time? Or
Hey, what the hell?
If you don't receive a response from me, it doesn't mean that I didn't enjoy and appreciate your email. It just means that I may have gotten 200 emails that day.
okay, no, it's good for people to know that, because sometimes they think you're sitting there waiting for their email, and then we all have a lot of stuff going on, but you especially, people are contacting you on a regular basis. So hopefully I stand out when I do something. But then secondarily, I'm guessing you may not have a project for me today because I don't fit whatever you're working on, and you might file me away if I've done it well for some future project, maybe. How does
Absolutely.
that really work?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we work on a lot of projects. I've got about, a bit over 100 titles a year that I work on. But within that, there's a bunch of author reads, and then there are things that are, they call for very specific casting. So, I might not have something at a given moment.
Is your day kind of like, here's Ernie Hachette. I'm in charge. I own the company. So and I'm giving here's Don's book on the importance of symbols in drumming.
Mhm.
And so that's his great book. It's gonna be a huge hit. It's
Yeah,
reverse
it's going to be very
harmony.
loud.
Yeah. Just chapter 1. So, anyway, so you get the book. So you have to. I've given this to you. So you're gonna cast it. Once you've looked at it, decide who the person is. Once you've cast it, is your mind, because you're work oriented, you have 100 books in a given year. Then do you move on to the next one? How much time do you need to spend after you've hired Stacey Carolyn to do your book? You say, okay, it's in Stacey's hands. I don't need to worry about it until it's due or anything like that. And then is your mind on the next book? Is that how you kind of work? Is that how it works?
Depends wildly on the book.
Mm-hmm.
We do have people at Hachette who are more focused on the post end of things. So my main focus really is on casting and the production, making sure that if someone's going into a studio, that the studio is booked, that they're going to be at the right place, determining if something needs a director, getting those folks connected, determining if something needs prep, script prep. So some projects are going to require a lot more involvement from me than other ones. So this book on drumming sounds like it's probably going to have a lot of pronunciations in it. Like there's going to be a
Zildjian.
lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot that maybe Stacy doesn't know, unless Stacy has expertise in that area.
Actually, he does, now that I bring it up.
There you go. So Stacy already has some expertise, but maybe Stacy's not 100% sure. So, I get Stacy set up. I get an editor hired. I get, them connected to make sure that he's able to get files over. But I'm going to chat with Stacy and go, hey, like, you've looked at this text. Do you need help with the pronunciation? And, maybe Stacy says, oh my God, there are 600 pronunciations. I can just tell already that like, this is going to be a lot. So then we start working on prep, make sure that he has the support he needs for that. And then once we have a list together, we send it off to the author to review. So, something like that, there's a lot more involvement. Multicasts, which are increasingly common, there's a lot more involvement. I do direct things pretty frequently. So, when a project is determined, when I determine that I should direct it, for whatever reason, I'm going to be much more involved at that point. So
are you directing in studio? Like, am I coming to your studio, or are you directing like me on Zoom if we did it?
Really depends on the project. When I can be in person, it's great to be in person, but a lot of times I'm working with people who are in various parts of the country, and sometimes Hachette's going to fly me somewhere, but not for your typical project. So oftentimes I'm remote.
So some of my questions and Don's questions may seem pointed, and indeed they are, because we've heard so many things come up. We've done this for almost 2 years now. You hear all these new things come up, so we kind of are trying to point our discussion to answer questions we know will happen. Like, for example, one of the things I like to do, if you give me an offer of a title, we'll use Don's book. Here's Don's book. You wanted me to do it, and you say, what's the date? This September 16th. You say it's due October 16th. Oh my goodness, I'll be in New England those 4 days. I could probably get it done. Unless that due date is in rock solid stone, I always advocate just tell you, say, Melanie, listen, I'm going to be gone 4 days. If the 6th or whatever, if this day happens to fall on a Friday, can I instead get it to you so it's at the office Monday morning when you get in, giving me the weekend, and then that I'm willing to do it. But the offers, I think, sometimes come, and sometimes the actors say, I can't make all those things right, or the money's a bit off. And I don't think people negotiate enough, in my opinion. Like, if you offer me $200, I say I need $300, and you say, well, I can't do that. Let's meet at $250 or whatever. I think that happens fairly regularly. Do you?
Yeah. So usually when I reach out to narrators for samples, what I do is say, hey, this is the recording window.
Yeah.
And usually I have that window is based off of just when we need to get files out to distributors. Sometimes there's a little bit of wiggle room. And, if you reach out to me and say, hey, like I can maybe do this, but it's going to be a week later, let me know. Once it starts getting into the 2 weeks later realm, 3 weeks later, that's usually past the point. So, the window that I give is based off of the idea that I want to have a full week for you guys to do pickups. Yeah. And I want then time on the other side of it for us to place them and make sure all the corrections are good.
That's going to make it clear to everybody that people that there may be some, like you said, wiggle room. And that's important to know. So you don't necessarily have to say no to things you want to say yes to.
Yeah. And usually then at that point, I can say something like, hey, there is this wiggle room, but if, we're going to have pickups back to you on this date and you're going to have to get them back to me in 2 days. Like, that's that kind of thing. And if that's possible, then we totally would love to have you on board. And in terms of rate, that is something where I really want people to be transparent as soon as they respond about something.
Yeah.
So, I offer a rate that's usually based on, SAG-AFTRA, but also based off of what I know a narrator's rate has historically been. So if I'm working with someone who either I've worked with in the past or I know a colleague of mine has worked with at a certain rate, like I'm going to offer them that rate if I know it.
Yes.
And, so if I reach out and your rate has recently changed, you're going for, you used to be $275, now you're $295. Like, let me know. Tell me that.
Yeah.
A lot of times I can make it work. It's really helpful for me to know it dictates what I'm going to do in terms of my editor, things like that. Sometimes there's room in the budget. It's worth telling me then. Please, please, please do not tell me this after you've gotten the book. That
Why
is
not?
because then, then you're basically kind of strong arming me, because
Yeah,
you've
yeah.
already been presented to the author. You've already, the author's already been like, oh my God, I love Don.
That
I
won't
love Don
endear
so
me
much.
to you for the future stuff?
Yeah, it's going to be a real struggle for me if you sent me a sample and I said 275 PFH and you're like, yeah, sample, here you go. And then you get the gig and you're like, actually 500 PFH.
Yeah.
That's a bit of a
Okay, so it's
Yeah.
so obviously that's one of the things that's not going to have you look at me favorably for the future. But what else could I do accidentally that would cause you to say, wow, I may gut it out on this one because I already have to. I don't really think I'll work with this person again. What mistake could I make innocently that would be a no-go for the future?
I mean, I guess I feel like truly innocent mistakes in general, I feel like I have a lot of forgiveness for.
Okay.
I do think something like, again, if most of the time it's when it's not communicated, when, something happens like, oh, actually, I'm going to need to do this 2 weeks later. And you tell me this,
At the
a
end.
week, yeah, like 2 days before the original due date. That's going to be a real struggle for me. That's going to be something that is going to make it complicated. And obviously things happen, like life happens.
Right. We all
were
have that.
talking, yeah, we were talking before things started about COVID. And the fact of the matter is people are still getting COVID and it's ruining people's voices for weeks at a time. We can't control that, end of the day, like we're going to figure it out. We're going to make it work. Just be transparent, be communicative. Let me know, because that way I can talk to the editor, I can talk to the person, the people who are doing quality control and say, hey, this schedule is going to have to change. And can we make it work? Because sometimes I need to get a new editor because they have other things on their docket. So yeah, just, again, you're all human. We're all human. Just tell me what's going on.
Yeah, be honest.
Okay.
Let's look at some of these questions.
Yeah, we have some really good questions here. So I'm going to start. I'm going to
Cherie Galper.
Yeah. So is there a way for narrators to find out what Hachette books haven't been cast yet so we can reach out to the producers and directors?
So it's a little tricky. You certainly can by looking at the listings. Like we do put the metadata out there when something has been cast. I can say in terms of timeline, like I'm currently working on casting for books that are publishing in January. I would say that's around the zone of where a lot of my colleagues are as well. So if you're looking at books that publish in January 26th, there's a good chance that they've already been cast or are currently in casting, but you can take a look at stuff that's for February, March. And
How would we find the stuff that's for February and March? I mean, is that
I don't know that there is a single place that you would easily find this.
Book List and Publishers Weekly
Yeah.
frequently have the new titles that publishers get. So like Don Baarns sold his title to Hachette and or whatever, so that comes up. So that's one way. When an author writes or agent sells, they like to promo that, and generally that news comes out long before casting's begun.
Yeah. So you can take a look at that. You can take a look on Hachette's website. There's going to be information about upcoming books. And I get emails from narrators all the time. I do my best to respond to those. I'll either put the narrator in touch with, if it's not me who's producing the title, put them in touch with who is, or oftentimes people will reach out about something that's actually being produced by one of our UK partners.
Oh,
so
question on that.
Nice segue.
Yes, thank you for doing that.
So
yeah.
Do I have a counterpart at Hachette UK? So Hachette UK functions entirely separately from Hachette, Book Group USA. So they do things very differently. We kind of will buy and sell audio from each other all the time. So we work with each other, but we're not doing the same thing. We're not going through the same processes. So it's very different. I've chatted with some of the people over at Hachette UK, but it's a very different setup.
And then, so if someone were to contact you, you just refer them over to them if they're a UK based, or if I'm in the UK, should I just forget about talking to people here in the States, or
Not at all. I work with people who are UK based frequently. You know, we
because
have
they speak English, don't they?
I knew you're gonna. I held off on that because it was just lying there. That's low hanging fruit, Don.
Okay.
you know, I have a lot of books that come up, especially, you know, we're in an era where everybody's big on romantasy. It's huge. It's the thing. So I have a lot of romantasy titles, and frequently the authors are really interested in hearing someone with a British accent read. So, you know, I work with lots of UK based narrators. I've done a number of books that, you know, where I've gotten up at 5 a.m. to to record with them and all of that. So, you know, that's something that we do all the time. So if you are UK based or based anywhere, it doesn't have to be the UK or the US, you can absolutely reach out to me. It's more that certain titles are produced in the UK, and I know, again, like their processes are very different. I do know that they work with some home studios, but a lot of what the UK does is in studio in Sheffield or London.
Okay.
And
I'm
the
not.
UK rates for actors for the actors in the UK are generally less than US actors get.
Yeah.
It's just the nature of the beast right now. They don't have a strong audiobook actor type union.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. But they can and do work under US loot when they
Yeah.
get a job.
Yeah.
Speaking of loot,
Yeah. So so Dave out here is asking, is my normal rate at $400 per finished hour too much for a regular Hachette book gig?
It depends on the book. You know, there are a lot of books that are pretty tight in terms of the budget. So 400 PFH, it does tighten us up in terms of other options. You know, there are certainly plenty of books that are available that would work with that rate. You know, but I think it is worth knowing that to some extent there are going to be cases where we just look at that and we go, you know, this isn't going to work.
may I offer something in that kind of money that Dave's mentioning?
Mhm.
A couple of things. One, if you're charging 400 a finished hour, I wonder if that's what your charge is for, let's say, an indie title where you, Dave, are paying. You're either doing it or you're paying someone to do the editing, proofing, mastering. So you're really pulling in 253 and giving them 100. If that's the case, think about it, because Hachette does that for you.
Yeah.
All the edit, all that stuff that you ship out now or do yourself and want to get paid separately for, the big houses do it. So, for example, I have no idea how to edit or master a book. No, I don't care to. But those who do it, and when I've done my own independent stuff, I send it out to people whose job is to do that. So that would change my rate. The other thing is, when you talk about your rate in a book, if Melanie reaches out, and I've done this a bunch of times, and you said, Johnny, I've got a book, again, let's say it's 200, and I say, no, it's not my rate, let's talk. Sometimes you can make a deal. Every book has a different budget. Don's drum book may have a low budget, or
Very.
Don's lesbian vampire romance book will have a higher budget because it's going to sell better. It just will.
Right.
Just because the nature of the book and the art cover and stuff. If that's the case, you have to understand that not every book Hachette puts out, or Macmillan, or anybody puts out, has the same budget. Every book has it. So you just ask, hey, I don't know if this is in your budget. My rate is this. How close can you come keeping to your budget? That shows that you know that she wants you, but has some financial issues that might be. And my deal generally is, look, I'll do this for you at the rate you can afford, but let's promise I get one after at my rate. And generally a deal like that can happen, or something close to it. But I promise you, if you budge a little bit on your bottom line dollar, it makes a difference to the people casting you, because it means you want the book, you want to work with them, you want to begin a relationship. But I think it's fair to let them know you're doing it.
Yeah.
Does that sound right?
Yeah, no, exactly. And that actually does. I just thought of another thing that is an innocent thing that a narrator might do that can cause some difficulty.
Mhm.
And it comes down to studios. So we will put up narrators in a studio when the situation calls for it. And, you know, especially if they're New York based, we love to have folks in our New York studios. You know, oftentimes it's nice. It doesn't cost us that much. Other times when narrators are located elsewhere and do want to go in studio, it does cost us more. And sometimes that is merited and it's valuable, and we just need to know. We need to know up front. If, for instance, so our narrator database that I mentioned earlier, it has a question about home studio or not. If you put that you have a home studio and I reach out to you, I'm kind of assuming you have a home studio. So you can ask, you can say, hey, like, I have a home studio, but this book seems really epic. It's, 25 hours long, and I'm a little worried that I'm not going to be able to engineer this to the extent that it demands. And you can talk to me, and I can say, yeah, like, I'll work with this, and I have the budget. I can get you into a studio and make it work. But if you said that you had a home studio and then you're like, actually, no, I can't record at home, please tell me that when you respond about the offer. Like,
I'm
just let
I'm
me know.
surprised that these days anybody doesn't have a home studio. That doesn't mean they wouldn't want to go in potentially for a lot of reasons, but I'm surprised you're running into people that are not able to produce something reasonable at home just because it's so common these days, and with COVID and all. Do
Yeah,
you run into that very often, that somebody really can't record?
I run into it semi-frequently. Most of the time, it's folks who are either in New York or LA. And again, if you're in New York, it's pretty easy for us to get you in. LA, there are options. There are some options that are like pretty reasonable.
And
And again, we want to make it work. I just need to know ahead of time.
but now, okay, but also if I'm a narrator, I have to understand, if I'm going into a studio, you're paying the engineer, you're paying for the
Mhm.
space. So are you going to be expecting me to take a slightly lower fee because I'm going into a studio, or is it the opposite? I mean, how does that affect my per hour, you know, rate with
There
you?
are there are some narrators who actually have that built in. I know that there are some people who will say they're 400 PFH in their home studio, they're 300 PFH in a professional studio, something like that. And usually I'm not going to ask for that. I might say, hey, like, we really don't have the budget to go into a
Yeah.
studio. And if at that point the narrator's like, well, I'll do this for this much, that's a little bit of a different scenario. I haven't had that exact conversation, I
Okay.
think, come up, but it is something that's just, again, really worth telling me ahead of time, because I love studios, don't get me wrong, and I love to be able to get people into them because it's great and it's a different way of doing an audiobook that, frankly, I miss a lot of the time. I'm sure narrators miss it to some extent, not having sounding boards. I've also worked with lots of people to have like a remote engineer for them or a remote director for them. These are things that, again, like, please ask, please let me know that this is something that's really helpful for you, and I will see if I can make it work. It's about open communication and just being clear.
So what are
Yeah,
the
that's
things that are
well
going
said.
to endear me to you if I were your narrator that's new? I know this is a stretch in my case, but pretend you're talking to Johnny and you don't know him and he comes in the first time. What is it when you work with somebody and they do X or Y, you go, ah, cool, got it.
I really love it when a narrator sends me like a list of questions about the book. Especially when they do it like a full week ahead of when they're supposed to record. They send me questions. They
The
send me
hour
questions about,
before.
they send me questions about the pronunciations, about characterization, things like those, things they'd love to know from the author. Love it. Tells me that they read ahead of time, that they're interested and engaged, and that's super valuable.
So you just want to know that I'm doing my homework and that I'm engaged and excited about this as well, and I'm planning ahead. Is that a
Yeah.
reasonable?
Yeah, and again, asking questions. Love it when people ask questions. This is one of those things where I've worked on hundreds and hundreds of books at this point. Every time I discover words that I don't know how to pronounce, and I'm like, oh, surprise! There's another word that I thought was one way, and it's another way. So I love when people are willing to go, you know what? I don't know this. Let me ask, rather than just
Yeah.
assume. So that's a
In
great
my
sign.
experience, I think it's always smarter just to ask, even if you're sort of know, because
Mhm.
yeah, and also, like, I know some publishers don't want the actor to be in touch with the author. Um, Generally, that's said in up front.
Mhm.
Don't talk because the author doesn't want to be bothered or something. Other times, like a lot of times, an author will come to a publisher, and I'm the voice they've used, so they bring me with them, so I'm there.
Yeah.
And because I know the author, a lot of times, and I've made a mistake. I think no, that's never come back to bite me, but because I have a friendship with the author, if I say, hey, John, how do you pronounce this guy's name? Because it's a real person he talked
Mhm.
to. Sometimes I do that and I don't tell anybody, but I suppose it's best for me to let you know that I have a relationship with this
Yeah.
author and that they're close enough that I can reach out if I need to. And you said, I prefer that you don't, to keep it so that we know, because you guys need to know what I'm doing. Because at the end of the day, the publisher answers for everything.
Yeah. No,
You
that's
know,
absolutely the case. And, a lot of times I would say that if you have a pre-existing relationship with the author, that's great. I've worked with narrators on many occasions who do. Often what I like is for this all to be an email, for me to be
part of
copied.
email.
Yeah. And also part of it is because we don't want to have to double up on our research. So if in this case, you're reaching out to John, the author, and you're
Yeah.
like, how does this name pronounced? Because you know this person. Meanwhile, we're on our end, we're researching this, we're looking up recordings of this guy, we're trying to find an interview, we're trying to find all of
Oh,
this.
yeah. The
So
same.
it's really nice for us to be able to go like, oh, actually it's already there, we got it. So
The
So do
difference is when you guys do it, your people that's their job for the day. When the actor's doing it, we're in the booth and we're looking up how to pronounce percussion or whatever. And so you go to YouTube or something to see
Mhm.
what's there. And then YouTube knows it's you. And they put all those videos up that all that clickbait stuff. Like I've got Jiminy Glick all over the place coming up on the side of my screen. So my hour or 3 hours or 4 hours set aside to record the book becomes 6 because I'm watching stupid videos have nothing to do with what I'm doing. Well, if you're people at the office, they're not allowed to watch those videos, are they?
Well, they're not supposed to, but it's
they are people, yeah.
What do we waste?
So
Waste stuff.
let's talk about your directing. So Rebecca has an interesting question. When you direct recordings, are they doing punch and roll, or are you just having to do open recording and then we go on and do it again? And how do you work that?
largely depends on the narrator and the recording situation. So I'll have a conversation at the beginning with whoever I'm working with. Obviously, if it's an author that I'm working with, we're going to do an open roll unless they happen to have a bunch of recording experience and love punch. I just find that's easier, faster. We're paying for studio time. Like we can deal with a slightly more complicated edit. So that's that. For professional narrators, the preference is to do punch, but I have found on occasion that there's certain kinds of projects where it just doesn't flow well if we're doing punch, and it doesn't work as well. And I mean, at that point, I'm happy to do open roll. Really, for open roll, we just need someone who's able to mark up the script. If I'm there, I can mark up the script and make sure that the editor has something to follow. So again, it's a conversation. We're happy to work with people and make the thing that's going to create the best final product.
For those of you who haven't done the open roll when you're being directed via Zoom or something, it can throw off your game a little bit because you're so used to when you're screwing up stopping for a second, so you're not open rolling at all. I've done it a bunch of times, and they go, no, Johnny, don't hit, just keep it going.
Johnny, could you be quiet?
Because it really messes up it messes up
Yeah.
the process.
A little bit. But no, it's again, it's a conversation and probably more punch.
And Stacy wants to know.
Yeah. Okay, I'll put that up there.
I never. You know, Stacy Carolyn is a guy. She's a great guy.
So yeah, Stacy wants to know if we got yeah, I can't do it. So yeah, Stacy, you're on for the vampire harem stuff.
However, we are going to be doing it in mime, so it's going to be a little different audiobook.
Mime audiobook. I don't know how that works.
Yes.
Well, somebody says chapter 1, and they don't hear anything until someone says chapter 2.
Very exciting. It'll get great reviews.
It's an easy read.
Now you've directed a whole lot of different narrators and books. I just saw on your resume, and it's probably out of date, 70 plus books from a director's.
Yeah, that's out of date.
Okay.
It's well over 100 at this point. It's probably close to 200.
Okay.
Might be more than 200.
But those are just the ones you've directed, which means also you've been involved with thousands at this point over the last 7 years. Is that close?
Probably not thousands. So my first 5-ish years in the business, I was directing and doing quality control engineering. So that was a good mix of things. Probably.
What was your first big book that your first big deal? Said, oh my God, I can't believe I got this.
Oh gosh, my first big book. That's really, really hard to remember at this
Right? How about your top 3 favorite that you've done? And that's
Top
not fair either, because then you have to leave something out.
Yeah,
How about name 3 books?
name 3 books. So of things that I've really enjoyed working on in recent times, I worked with the musician Nico Case on her memoir last year, and that was a wonderful experience. Just a great process with an author who was really engaged, really involved, and just loved doing it. So that was wonderful. Also, great book. I worked on a book earlier this year called The Devil Three Times.
The
Which is
Devil 3 times?
Yeah, as a debut novel, and worked with Robin Miles, James Foey, and Janice Abbott Pratt on that, and just really interesting multicast, complicated book. Loved working on that. One of my favorite projects from a few years ago was a book called The Apology by Jimin Han, and that was wonderful. Really specific needs. The book was all from the point of view of a 103-year-old Korean woman who died at the beginning of the book and is reflecting on things as a ghost. So,
Wow.
had to get really interesting with the casting and just
That's
really fun
fascinating.
experience.
There's a book called Tokyo Ueno Station that's the same, but told from a Japanese person's perspective. Almost the same storyline.
Huh.
Interesting.
Well, I have a
So,
question. So
Go ahead.
do you right now, are you specializing in a certain niche, or do you like your year is just all over the place, or are you, I do romance, I mean, what's your favorite?
So I am all over the place in terms of what I do. I work across genres. I would say that I have developed a little bit of a specialty for multicasts. I work on a lot of those, and it's been, again, there's been a lot of romantasy this year. It's an interesting genre. I wouldn't say that it's what I go to read. I love literary fiction. That's certainly my favorite genre to work on, and memoir as well. Like I really love working with an author on memoir. So those are my favorites, but there's things to love in across genres.
Can you tell me about multicast? So if you had 3 narrators, are you directing all 3 at once? Are they like at the same time? Or are you doing Johnny's part first all by himself and directing that, and then doing my part second, and then doing Lisa's part third? Or how are you working those?
It's almost always the latter. I know that there have been situations where people at Hachette have managed to get everybody in the same room to do something. It's really complicated in terms of our timelines and just the way that it all works. So
it's also expensive because you need a really big studio to put everyone in there.
You do. You need to get things set up in a way that's pretty tricky.
Yeah.
And I would say that most of the time it's not feasible.
Okay.
So most of the time, and then there's different kinds of multicast. So the one I just mentioned, The Devil Three Times, that's no trading lines. Those just were, each chapter was from different points of view. So they were fully from each narrator. So that's that style. And then of course there are the trading line, the dialogue assembly multicasts, and those are increasingly common, I would say.
Most of the multicasts I've been involved in, and it's become such a big part of the business now. Mm-hmm. You'll direct, I'll do my part, and it'll just be edited in. Yeah. But generally, it's not, "Hi, how are you? Fine." It's not that kind of multicast. Usually, it's Johnny's chapter, and then Don's chapter, and then Melanie's chapter. So it's not quite as, it's not back and forth like a 1930s movie dialogue or something. Yeah. But when I would say from the acting point of view, if you haven't, try to get yourself involved in as much multicast, because hey, it's a lot easier to win an Audie Award without doing it. You pretty much phone it in. You get a little award later. It's not, but you don't have to do not the whole book. It's interesting. Paul Rubin.
I know the name. I haven't worked with him.
He directed us in 2 years ago. Scott Brick, Dion Graham, Simon Vance, Kate Mazur, all these one. We did the Scottish play. So all these different people did it, and it was really a labor of love. I don't know if anybody made a dime off it, but it was one of the best versions of that I've heard. Even though I was in it, it was just good, and it was so much fun to do it. And in a multicast, it's interesting because you can put your heart and soul into. Like, I generally play 4 or 5 minor characters, but it's so much more fun. It's so much more interesting.
It's got its positives, yeah.
Yeah, and the audiences really seem to dig it.
So, and a question that came up here. So, this is an interesting, from a technical point of view. Are you just having me record and then send you in the recordings? You might direct me, and then, or are you recording on your end and I'm doing something like Source Connect or another way, and then you guys are recording on your end? How does that work for you guys?
So generally speaking, we're not doing Source Connect. Usually we're going to rely on narrators to record on their end. I will say for multicast, I really prefer to have a director. I think that that's pretty important. There are cases where we don't do that for whatever reason, just usually it's budget and timeline. But I think it's helpful to have one person who's kind of corralling everybody and working with everybody at the same time. I mean, not at the same time. They're working with everybody sequentially, but they know what the other person has done. So
Right.
they can have a conversation with the narrator that they're working with. But typically speaking, we're still going to have the narrator record themselves and have the director call in like via Zoom or something like that. If there is a request again for a remote engineer, we can absolutely make that happen most of the time. Again, budgets start to get complicated, especially with multicasts.
Right.
But that is a possibility. Again, just ask. But usually the assumption is going to be narrator records on their end, and the director, if there is one, is going to call in via Zoom.
Cool.
Let me ask this. Now here you are doing this for us, and I'm really, really appreciative, and as is our audience, I promise you. And you'll get a whole bunch of emails from everybody saying, look at me, look at me. But these kinds of things in the audiobook industry, and the whole acting game, the person with responsibility for casting sometimes shows up at these events. I know Leonardo Audio has things, and I know PJ Auckland out at Dion Masterclass. Do you participate in Joel's audiobooks at sea, and Jennifer's Cincinnati, a thriving narrator no more? All those kind of things. Do you like to go to those things? Do you find them helpful? If you do go, or what other ways do you find to meet and get in touch with new and existing talent to continue your list of narrators to hire?
So I was actually just at the masterclass with PJ last week. So I was the guest. I know Stacy was there. I'm sure there are a few other people in the audience who might have been. So I did that. I did Panicon a couple weeks ago. I did a panel for them. I love working with the APA on stuff, doing meet the producer events, things like that. It's really valuable, I think, to interact with narrators. I have gone to APAC, although that's kind of a zoo, not the most wonderful way to meet people, in my opinion. But I do really love events like this. Things like the speed dating. I think it's got a different name, Quick Pitch now.
Yeah, I don't think the speed dating got a negative connotation, I think.
Yeah. So now it's called Quick Pitch, but I've done that a number of times. Really enjoy that. Just again, getting connected to people in various different ways.
And you'll come to New England next year and be there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, just give me some advance notice and I'll make it work.
I'm giving you a whole year.
Well, I do know something. I heard a rumor that one, you like to plan in advance, and I think one of your hobbies, the birdie told me, you do some gardening, don't you? Like vegetables, or isn't this your hobby? Well, how in the world did you? Is that right?
Yes, it's very much my hobby. So I have a massive vegetable garden. I also have a bunch of blueberry bushes and pear trees and strawberry plants and things like that. So I have 32 tomato plants this year. It's
Wow.
kind of been a little gangbusters. So I do a bunch of canning, and I have over 100 cans already in my basement.
Wow.
At this moment of pickles.
Again, I asked you that. What becomes of those cans? You don't eat all. You can't eat them all.
No, I do not eat. I do not eat 100 cans of pickles in a year. No, they're gifted out largely, and so I kind of, when I'm doing the work of it and going, oh God,
you go to people's homes and go, oh, thank you, you brought pickles.
Most people are pretty happy about it, actually. So
I was hoping for wine, but thanks. We'll drink some brine together.
people like pickles.
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense.
I'm from Chicago. I love pickles.
But I also think, though, that it's a personality thing that I find fascinating, that you understand investment / return, and that something that doesn't come immediately. So I send you an email and you don't respond immediately. But she's a person that works something that's just the norm. You plant, there's nothing there for, I don't know what it takes, 6 weeks, 2 months, and then you see the little thing, and then it grows and becomes a massive thing.
And sometimes it takes years. I mean, I planted asparagus this year. I'm not going to get to eat asparagus from that asparagus for like 2 years.
Oh, really? It
Okay.
takes how long?
Yeah, it's a perennial. And it
Have you considered planting like guaranteed cash crops like, poppies or marijuana?
I'm not going to say such
Asking for a
things on a
friend.
live stream.
Because I can get up there in about half an hour.
No, we're sticking with good old-fashioned potatoes and tomatoes around here.
It must be one. I do recall our next door neighbor when I was a kid had tomatoes, and we could come over and and there's a farm right next door to where I live, and you can get stuff there. But the tomatoes are so big and wonderful, and nothing tastes better than a garden-grown tomato.
I agree.
I don't know what happens to them by the time they end up in the local stores, but man, they're so different.
They pick them too early. They're just.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, they have to be preserved, so they like pump a little. There's like a little gas that they pump to slow ripening and then to start ripening. So they just.
You grow those big giant like heirloom tomatoes that look really weird in weird colors.
Yep, I do.
Those are fantastic.
But so that's one of the, I just find it a fascinating thing, and it tells me it is interesting. I think people's hobby give you an insight into a little bit of their personality. If I'm into race cars, then that's going to give you a different impression of me than if I'm into gardening, and they're both valid. But you're a planner, and also you're working with a publisher who is months out, and some of us are working with, you get the call or you get the email these days. No one calls, but you get the message that says, "Are you available in 3 weeks?" It's like, what? You're doing longer term things, and that's a big deal and a totally different atmosphere than some of the indie publishers that are really calling about how soon can you start this project. And that's an interesting thing. If I were to contact you, how often do you want me to recontact you?
Again, I appreciate the quarterly or biannual newsletter. I like that. It keeps you in mind. It's nice to know what people are doing. So I'm certainly never going to say no to those. I'd say that's probably as frequent as makes sense. I do love hearing from people after I do events like this. It's really nice to know who is there, and just again, knowing people's names. It's useful.
And just, the nature of this, there's a lot of people this goes to YouTube. A lot of people watch this later while this is live. So the next months or so, people will say, "Oh, I saw you on the show." And you'll say, "What show was that?"
Yeah.
It was this one. Yeah.
I think I'll remember.
Yeah.
Johnny Heller and Don Baarns show.
Well, we're memorable. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it is a thing.
It's a good thing.
So what are you working on? What's your book right now that you're working on?
Oh gosh, I am working on multiple books. Like I said, I'm really looking at the books that publish in January right now. I've got a couple romanticises. I've got a musician memoir that's
What's a romantasy? I want to be clear about this.
Yeah.
It is a fantasy that is, so it's got fantastical elements, but romance is really the plot. So okay. I think that's what makes it a romance rather than a fantasy strictly. It's romantic.
Sorry.
Aren't all romances no.
Getting dark here.
Yeah, sorry.
Usually there's wizards and fairies and vampires and
I guess those aren't in traditional romances, right? And so that would be this. Okay. But that's a big, and from your point of view, that's one of the big growth areas right now.
It's certainly the buzzy one right now. Book Talk is all about the romanticises, and romance in general is huge in audio, as people generally know. And the romantasy genre has proven extremely popular in audio, and it's also very strongly favored towards multicast as well. So it's an interesting genre.
And I have to ask real quick, when I contact you and send you my stuff, do you want links? Do you want what do you want to see in the email that comes to you as far as me like you want an hour-long submission?
I love just a little update, preferably without attachments, because sometimes our emails get kind of sent off to the place where they don't come back from
Right.
because an attachment looks suspicious.
Right.
So
So
generally
links?
speaking,
You're certainly welcome.
links, links, yeah. So send a link, to your website, wherever your samples are living, and just give me a little update about what you're working on, what you're doing.
Cool.
That's what I like to see. And sometimes I like to see stuff about people's hobbies as well, because it's easy to remember when someone has got a specific
I'm
thing.
gonna see how far people stretch to be a part of your world. I understand like gardening. I enjoy dirt.
Yeah.
Hey, if you do genuinely like gardening at any level, I'm always interested, because that's my hobby.
Because you're a person.
Mhm.
You've been a delight. We can't thank you enough for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed it, and
Had a great time.
it's been wonderful. Yeah, so thank you so very much, and we will all be in touch. For those of you out there, please like these things, comment on these things, and share them with others. And there you go, Don.
Yeah, Melanie, you've been a delight. I really appreciate you being here. And for everybody else, be sure to subscribe, be sure to like, be sure to share this with other people. Always helps. And when you get a hold of Melanie, be sure to let her know, hey, you saw her here. And of course, we look forward to seeing you next week on The Wires. Have a great day.